The background to this handout. When we spoke about conflict resolution, we said that there's three types of conflict actually. There's conflict between me and another person. There's conflict, what we call the intrapsychic conflict between me and myself. What should I do? I don't know. And then in conflict theory, they call it conflict between me and reality would be the third category. Meaning, there's a health issue that I don't want to accept, I'm aging and I don't want to accept it, whatever that would be. From a Torah perspective, a conflict between me and reality would be called the bitachon issue. Because it's really a dialogue between me and Hashem. Thank you so much. Okay? Now, I'll give you a little bit of history that most of the classes, or I think all the classes we've done for the first semester, were all interpersonal. We spoke about hakpada, we spoke about judging favorably, and we spoke about jealousy. So I really always considered that my area was more the relationship topics. So one of my groups approached me after, unfortunately, a certain woman in my community, she wanted to form a group. Her sister lost an 11-year-old, 12-year-old girl to cancer, and got her thinking that she wants a group about bitachon. So she asked me if I could put together a group on bitachon. My first feeling was, no, this is not really my topic so much. My topic's more relationships. But then I sat down and started doing the research. And I felt that even just, and we're going to learn this about bitachon, there's something about bitachon that even being involved in learning it, and I know that you have other classes which touch on bitachon as well, it just increases, there's something about it that being involved in it makes you live it more. We'll talk about that. So I found it was having such a good effect on me that it became one of my favorite topics. I did it with this group for a year, a small group. Mrs. Lechman is in this group. It's a small group, mostly teachers. And towards the end of the group, one of the women who's a teacher in a different seminary surprised me by taking a year's worth of material and condensing it into this card. She wrote it up, she made little icons, she laminated it. I couldn't laminate this for you, I wanted to, but you guys don't have this here. So, you do have a laminate machine here? Really? Oh, maybe I could ask to have a laminator for you. Okay, you'll see if you like it enough to laminate it. I mean, for my group, this was after a year of working, so they wanted it to put on their fridge, but I'm not going to profess to say this is the most important thing you've ever had in your hand. So, if at the end you want to laminate it, I'll be happy to do it for you. So, it's a year's worth of material. And we're going to do it in 2 or 3 weeks. We'll see how the group wants. If you want longer, we could do it for longer. So basically, yes?
Just a really quick question. Last time we were talking about the different types of hats we make when the decision. Are we doing that today?
Did we not finish that?
No.
Ooh, please? You're kidding.
Yeah.
I thought, oh no, guys. Okay, time out. Okay. This we will get to, but we have to finish the hats. I thought I finished that whole topic with you.
We only did the white hat, and you said we could.
Oh, I am so sorry. Okay,
no,
so hold on to your bitachon things, and we will. Can you please bring it next week? Okay. It could be we'll even get to it this week. Depends how quickly we're doing. Okay. I really apologize. In my head, I had wrote that we finished decision making. Okay. So let's get to it. Sorry. Stop. Go. Step back. Okay. Last week, we were talking about making better decisions. And we're talking about the fact that some people who think in a ruminatory way, rumination means to reprocess ideas again and again, their head works like a circle. What?
Like ruminants.
Ruminants.
What's animals that chew their cud?
Oh, I never knew that. I never knew that. Oh, good. Okay, great. Thank you. Ruminants, that's what it's called? Okay, so rumination is kind of like a circular motion in the brain, which you usually don't choose to be this way. It has a lot to do with the way your brain is wired. Very often when people tell me they're ruminatory, I ask them who else in your family is ruminatory, because it's a certain way of thinking. So this could be about something that you're scared about, or it could be a decision you're trying to make. So when you hear bad news, when you hear some kind of cruel thing that ISIS did, right? So somebody who doesn't have a ruminatory brain says, oh, that's scary. The world is getting really scary. There's, these things are happening. And then it goes out of their brain or gets stored somewhere, and they keep moving. And they're like, yeah, I have a lot to do today. I have to study, I have to talk to my friends, I have to whatever. Somebody who has a ruminatory brain, the idea goes in, and it's like killers, murderers, and then it goes around, and it comes again, killers, murderers, and the pictures come up in their head, and they keep on reprocessing the same information again and again. I think I mentioned last week, it's like a Ferris wheel in an amusement park. If you know somebody on the Ferris wheel, like they come to a certain point on top, they wave to you, and then they come around, they wave again, they come around, they wave again. That's what happens with people who are ruminatory in their ideas, is that the same fears or concerns or worries or even guilt keeps coming back to them again and again. So there's this illusion of spending a lot of time thinking about a problem, when in reality you might only be thinking about 5 minutes worth of material, but you're reprocessing it for 20 hours in a row.
Everyone has a bit of that.
Yeah, completely. And usually when you're triggered by a certain topic, like if you said something which was really embarrassing, or you were in a situation where something happened that was really embarrassing, chances are you're going to go back to say, oh no, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? You'll do that again and again. But for people who are really ruminatory, they do this about a lot of different things. Now, that could be true about worry, but it could also be true about decisions. I want to just say something about the worry thing that's very interesting, that we don't always understand why people are harping on a certain topic. This is fascinating. Myself, when I was here for the Shabbaton, I only came with my youngest son, who was 5 years old. This happened when he was like almost 2. He was always like a very big thinker, and he was a baby. He was not even 2 years old. He's sitting on the floor playing with his blocks, and I'm talking to my older children, and we're looking at an encyclopedia. So they're going through different countries, and we reached Sierra Leone. Now, Sierra Leone is in the news a lot now because of Ebola, unfortunately. But Sierra Leone, little country, not very well known. We're reading about Sierra Leone, and there's a picture of like a very basic hut, like a primitive hut where people live. Now, it happens to be that I had once learned that in Sierra Leone there was like a certain period of time when a lot of babies were missing. They thought there was like kidnappers snatching babies. And then it comes out that there was a certain animal that would come, and because they don't have normal doors in their house, they couldn't protect their homes. And an animal would come in, snatch a baby, and leave. And many, many babies were missing. So I was telling this over to my children, who were older, who kind of were able to process it, not even thinking that my little baby on the floor was listening to us. Now, this was so important that I saw this, because it explains something very important. Later, my kids go off to play, and I'm like, cutting a salad. And I see my little baby, almost 2, a toddler, I see him walk over to the encyclopedia. He opens up to the page of Sierra Leone, so he saw which page we were on, even though he was sitting somewhere else. And he says, he looks for it, all the countries, and he finds it. Sierra Leone, he says, they don't have doors. Where are the babies? Very scary. Now he was talking to himself, but he said it loud enough for me to hear it. Now listen to what happened after. I was so happy that I heard that little, he has this little self-talk. Where are the babies? I don't know. Very scary. The next few days, he starts asking me a lot about doors. We have a door, right? I take him out to the car, and I see he's walking around the car. 4 doors! 4! We have 4 doors here! He has this obsession about doors. Everywhere he goes, he says, Mommy, does my friend David have a door? Does this one have a door? My school has a door. This has a door. My that has a door. And if I went out and overheard this little talk to himself in 100 million years, I never would. I said, okay, kids are funny. This guy has an obsession about doors, I connected it to Sierra Leone because in his mind that went off as being scary. A place which doesn't have doors, babies aren't protected. He still felt himself to be young, and he was scared. So amazingly, I heard him talk about that, because if he would have just processed it in his brain, which is what most people do, and then they come up with all kinds of fears that they have and all kinds of associations. I had another child who at one point was scared to brush her hair. I'm like, what is that? Finally, it came out that she was seeing people who were under chemo treatments who didn't have hair, and she was associating that you can cause yourself cancer by, she just misassociated. It wasn't that losing your hair as a result of the treatment. It was that if you lose your hair, you'll have cancer. That was her association in her brain. The idea is that we have to understand that our brain sometimes will get stuck. Somebody else, all my other kids, learned about Sierra Leone and went off to their day. But this little guy over there was worried about it, thinking about it again and again. The doors, the doors, the doors. Again, most people are not like this about a lot of things, but you can be like this about one topic, one relationship, one worry, one fear, one sickness, one something. And this is what causes rumination. When we get to bitachon, this, we will deal with the skills of overcoming that worry. That's next. Yes?
What's the difference between being ruminatory and just having one topic that like you're always talking about?
Okay, so the question's like this. If people's brains are a certain way, they will be much more susceptible to get stuck in a loop. You understand? It has a lot to do with the wiring. So I might have something going on in my life and I might be obsessing about it. It doesn't mean I'm an obsessive person. But if somebody is more ruminatory in their brain, more things will get stuck. That thing that happened with this child happens to be a little more ruminatory. He gets, during the war, ambulances would scare him. He has these things that other children were just like, oh, that's an ambulance, and go play. And then it's like, it's an ambulance, what's going on, right? So you see, what's interesting about this is you see it at a young age already. You see that a young child could think like this. Okay, why am I saying all this? Because some of us who are not particularly ruminatory do get this way when it comes to decisions. Because it's not just about, do I want to think about this or not, that I have to know what I'm going to be doing. And the idea of making a decision can make somebody reprocess the same information again and again and again. So the system that we're learning now with the hats is about taking the loop and opening it and making it into a straight line. Meaning if I'm thinking, I don't know what to do, should I major in this, should I major in this, I don't know what to do, you need a way to think about it, decide, and move on. Okay, so that is the shita. And the shita that we started last week with the hats, the idea being that you take off a hat and you put on another one and there's a few colors and you run through all the colors and then at the end you make a decision. Because people who are not ruminatory are good at this. They process the information and they say, okay, I'm doing it. For people who have a difficulty, they keep on reprocessing the same information again and again. Okay, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Okay, so what I want to demonstrate today is how you take off one hat, put on the other, and go through the whole list. We spoke about the white hat being heuristics, and that means that the first step is
White hat is what?
the white hat is about information collection. We said the fancy word for that is heuristics, H-E-U-R. And it's basically, what it's telling you to do is that when you have to make a decision, you have to collect the information that's necessary for that decision. Now, when you're talking about what you're going to major in, it's about figuring out, is this good for homemaking? Does this make money? Does it make money in Israel? How many years of schooling is it? How hard is the work? How well does it pay? Etc., etc. When you're talking about whether to break up with a guy or not, it's what characteristics does he have? What am I looking for? How does my list of my ideal list compare to what he has? Etc. So it could be even a relationship issue, but it's processing information. Okay, that's the white hat. Take off the white hat. Now we put on the red hat. And what's the red hat? The red hat represents emotion and intuition. Emotion and intuition means that I have to ask myself, after I have all the information, how do I feel about this decision? Now, I'm going to put it back into a relationship issue. Let's say there's some guy who has everything you're looking for, and you know in your brain that would be a good person to marry, right? But then you have to ask yourself, but how do I feel about him? And he could be perfect on paper, but I just don't like him. So processing emotion becomes the second hat. And I want to tell you that what happens with a lot of people is that they usually are stuck in one hat or two hats. Meaning a lot of men will do all the information collection, but they can't tell you how they feel. A lot of girls can tell you all about how they feel about something, but they don't have the information. So this sheet is telling you, in order to make a good decision, you need to try different things. You need to say, okay, now I'm putting on the logical hat. Is this good for me? What information? A clipboard where you walk around collecting information about about the choices. Then red, how do I feel about this? Now I would like to talk about intuition for a second, because red, emotion and intuition are both under the red hat. Intuition is a very complicated topic, because I could say to you, how do you feel? And you could say, I like him a lot. I'm really interested in him. Or you could say, I always dreamed about being a physical therapist. Then I say to you, what's your intuition? You could like somebody very, very much, but you could have a sense that he's not going to be good to you. And I want to tell you girls, it's not a stira. You can be very attracted to somebody who's really not good for you. So intuition is telling you, What's your gut feeling about this?
So if it's not about relationships and you're deciding between two emotions, when you say how do I feel about the decision, are you talking about overall or is it presumed that you've already decided because of the information?
No, you take both sides of the, let's say I'm deciding between speech therapy and occupational therapy. So how do you feel about being a speech therapist? How do you feel about being an occupational therapist? Meaning, if it's a decision that I have to make, what will it feel like to stay with this choice? What will it feel like to leave the choice?
So it's as if you look at each one as if you've decided it. Because
Right.
I would not feel until I know what I'm doing.
Okay, so you need to project further. And I remember one time, I'll just tell you personally, I remember when I was dating, I lived in Israel, my family came in Aliyah. I was going out with a guy who I liked very much, but he wanted to be a rabbi in America. And, logically I could tell myself that, whatever I could tell myself. I remember I had a dream one night, and I woke up imagining myself living in New York being miserable. And that was a very, very strong feeling. But I had to be there. Meaning, in the dating situation, okay, America, Israel. In my dream, I was married, and I had a few kids, and I wasn't living in Israel, and I was in the middle of New York, and I was lonely. And, but that was like, I had to project being there in order to understand how I felt about it. So yeah, you imagine yourself going off to the office every day to be a speech therapist. How do I feel about this? Some people are too emotional, and some people are not in touch with their emotions enough. And okay, I want to get into this okay, we're going to get back to it. But there's a difference between emotion and intuition. Emotion is, am I excited? Am I happy? Am I sad? Intuition is, what's my gut feeling about this? Now, I want to tell you something about intuition. Did we ever talk about intuition here? Did we ever go into it? Sounding familiar? What's that? Okay, so tell me if I went into this. Intuition is generally viewed by the world as being one of these spiritual heebie-jeebie things that some people have an intuition about things, and they know that it's going to rain tomorrow, and some people think Mashiach is coming tomorrow, whatever it is. Intuition, according to theory, is, and listen to this definition, is experience-based metacognition. Did I ever tell you that before? No. Listen to this definition. Experience-based metacognition. What does that mean? It means it has nothing to do with being the spiritual person who's in touch with forces. It means that your brain is processing very, 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 very quickly many, 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 many experiences that you've had in life and coming out with a feeling. I'll give you an example. You're standing by a bus stop. You're walking towards a bus stop, and there's a man standing there, and you have an intuitive feeling that he's not someone who you want to be close to, and you stand outside the bus stop. Now, what we usually think is that I kind of have this sense, the spiritual sense that's telling me, stay away from him. The theory has that experience-based metacognition means that millions of experiences that I've had in my life about people who are safe and people who are not safe, and the faces I've seen of people who are mean and the faces of people who are okay, and what a normal person looks like, what a person who's off mentally looks like. And your brain is processing that very, 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 very quickly, so quickly that it's metacognition. Metacognition means that it's above my consciousness. I don't even know that I'm doing it. And then, what's my conclusion after 2 seconds of looking at him? Stay away. So it is actually a cognitive process. It's just that I'm processing so quickly that I don't know what I'm thinking. But I'm thinking all the things I know about what people look like when they're normal, reliable, what they're not normal and reliable. Why is this important to know? Because we've spoken about Homer and Surah and Midot, right? So intuition also has Homer and Surah. Homer meaning the God-given gifts in it. Some people are very intuitive. But if you're going to say that it's really about life experience, the older a person is, the more their intuition can be trusted. But since it's also a Homer thing, meaning some people have a lot, you can have a 3-year-old who walks into I just got a phone call last night from a woman from New Jersey. What do I do about my child? He's very sensitive. He walks into school, and every time he looks at one of the teachers, he grabs my skirt and hides behind me. She looks nice, she's smiling. Who knows what she's doing? Because this kid walks in, looks at her, doesn't want to go near her. And he's a very, very intuitive child. Can you trust a 3-year-old's intuition that he doesn't trust, that he doesn't feel good about his teacher? So some kids are unbelievably intuitive, and by a very young age, they smell things out, and they know who to trust and not to trust. For many of us, it's going to be an issue of life experience. The more life experience you have, the better your intuition gets, because that's the tsura. The tsura of intuition is the more experiences I have in life, the better I am at reading people and understanding. So when I ask you, when you're wearing the red hat, and I say to you, well, what's your intuitive feeling about the situation? You also have to keep in mind, am I good with intuition naturally or not? Because I ask you, how's your intuition been in the past? And some people say, every time I'm in a situation where I don't trust somebody, I'm always right. And some people, unfortunately, it's not that way. They often get into situations with people who are not trustworthy. So we have to say that intuition grows with time, but you can have a 7-year-old who has very bad intuition, and you can have a 2-year-old who has great intuition, because it's also a gift from Hashem. Yes?
What if someone has good intuition, but in certain circumstances they choose to ignore them?
This is so common. Yes, go ahead.
But what does that fall under?
Okay, so what we're saying is that this system is encouraging you not to ignore your intuition. You don't have to make your decision based on it, because there's a lot of different hats. But one of the hats is, what's your gut feeling about this? It's not going to be the only criteria, but you're going to take it into consideration. And unfortunately, it's so sad that these are the people who sometimes get messed up and they lose all their money in business, and they kind of had a sense that they shouldn't have trusted the person, or they didn't listen to it, or they marry somebody who's not good for them. So you see a lot of people who maybe somewhere later will tell you in hindsight that they had a sense, but they didn't listen to it. And this shita is making you listen to it, because you're going to put on the white hat and you're going to collect your information. Then you're going to put on your red hat and you're going to say, how do I feel and what's my gut feeling? Okay? Somebody else want to ask something?
What if you have intuition when it comes to situations that are outside of your own personal self, but then when it comes to yourself, you're like, I don't have intuition for it?
It's very common. A lot of people shut down. They're very good at giving other people advice. They're not so good at advising themselves. I think that that's very, very true. When you wear the red hat, you don't always have to have intuition about every topic. You're just asking yourself, if I do have a gut feeling, what is it? It could be that speech therapy doesn't bring out any intuition for you. Intuition is very often about people and situations, by the way. You know what I'm saying? What's your sense about this person, or let's say even going to a certain school, or choosing roommates. What's your intuition about it? But very often, I think that's a very good point. A person will say none, don't have anything here, which is fine. You don't have to. But if you have it, you listen to it a little bit. Okay. There's a lot to say about intuition. It's a whole topic of its own. If people are interested, we can do it more. But we do say that women are more intuitive than men. Because when Chazal tells Bina Yitera Nitna L'Nashim, that extra sense is the reading between the lines that we as women do, that we often read things that are not obvious. And that's a lot of what a woman contributes to her marriage, is the ability to understand. Like the father saying, let's go for it, this is a great situation. She's saying, something about it smells funny, I don't like it. So we as women do have this koch. Even Chazal tells us that we have this koch. Okay, we're going to get back to the different hats at different points, but let's move on. What's the third hat? The third hat is the yellow hat. Yellow, because it represents the sun, is about optimism and positivity. And when you put on the third hat, the yellow hat, you ask yourself, what is the best possible outcome that can be in this situation? People often don't do this because they don't allow themselves to do this. You play out the situation and you say, wow, if I marry this person, we can build a lot together, we can have a really happy home. You kind of go forward. What will the situation look like? And the yellow hat is the optimistic route of trying to think, if this would work, how would it look in its best way? Again, to only wear a yellow hat would be like Pollyanna-ish, right? But as one of the many hats that you're putting on, you want to think best outcome. I'd like to say about this one, about the best outcome, I don't know if I ever said this here. I have 2 boys. My 2 oldest boys are very close in age, and they're 1 grade apart. So when it comes time to going to yeshiva, in school they were always a year apart, and we were sent to a community school, they were in the same school. When it came time to send them off to yeshiva, there was the opportunity, the ability to separate between them. And the idea was she would give them for the first time a chance to really just separate from each other, and each one will shine separately. And I was thinking a lot about damage control. If I send them to the same yeshiva, one of them will outshine the other, maybe they'll be competitive, it won't be good for them. I didn't think about the best possible outcome, that's the yellow hat, is that maybe they'll become very, very good friends. So we ended up sending them to the same yeshiva, and they became very good friends. After a lot of sibling rivalry all the first years in life, they became very good friends. But as I was making the decision, because I didn't know this shita yet, I wasn't thinking positive. One of the hats that you have to put on is positive. Why? Because it gives you the koch to make a decision. If you're always just thinking about damage control, okay, this one might crash this way, this one might crash that way. You also have to think positive. What's the best outcome for this, and what's the best outcome for that? Okay, that's the yellow hat. Next hat, number 4, black. No hashkafic connotations here, but the black hat is the negative hat. What's the worst possible outcome in this situation? If this thing would crash, what will it look like? Why is it important to wear the black hat?
So that you're prepared.
Completely. Edward DeBona says yes?
Sometimes it's not as bad as you kind of think it'll be.
Completely.
So what if that happens?
Okay, excellent. Both of these reasons are the reasons. Meaning, first of all, as you're saying, sometimes when you plan out what are you scared of, and even the thing that you're scared of, once you look at it, like, okay, it's not so bad. People often dramatize in their head how bad something can be. But when you look at the worst, it's not so bad. Or, as Ippy was saying, the research says forewarned is forearmed. If you know that a situation might have a certain difficulty, you can also come prepared for that difficulty. So even something like playing out a Shabbos choice, you're going somewhere for Shabbos to some exotic moshav, and you don't know what's going to be, and the yellow hat says to you, well, this might be the most unbelievably inspiring experience. Your black hat is telling you the food might be terrible, and the sheets might be dirty, and the whole thing might not work. So you pack a sandwich and you pack sheets in your bag in case you might need it. Okay, so even for small situations, when you think about how could it play out negatively, you can also come more prepared for that. Okay, so that's the black. The next is green. What are we on, number 5? Green. Green, because it's about growth, is about creativity. And green is thinking, is there some option that I'm not thinking about here, which could really get the best of both? Because often if you're deciding between two different things, you're polarizing. I'm either going to be a speech therapist or an occupational therapist. Maybe a nutritionist will be better. Maybe there's some choice that's out there that you're not even thinking about that could be really good. So the green makes you think creatively. Out of the box, are there other options that I didn't look at? I have this every so often between couples when they're dating and they can't figure out where they want to live. And it's particularly difficult if one party wants to live in Israel and the other party wants to live in America, and very often they have to find some kind of creative third solution. We spoke about sequential solutions might be, we'll start out in Israel for 3 years and then we'll move back to America. But some will choose a community in the States that is more Israel oriented or more not so materialistic. And that will be their kind of creative third option. Okay, so that's the green. Think creatively, out of the box, what's possible here that I'm not thinking about. Then the blue hat. Blue is an interesting hat because the blue hat is what's called process control. Process control means that I want to make sure that I'm using all the hats fairly. And that's the hat that I'm using now. I'm reviewing the way I used the first 5 hats. Why is this? Because there are some people who will spend hours on the red hat, red and black. I'm emotional and I'm negative. But they're not really giving fair time to all the hats. The blue hat says to you, if you're being negative, make yourself think positive. If you're being emotional, make sure you're using the white hat and you have the information. And this is where many people mess up their decisions, because they get stuck in 1 or 2 hats. Meaning some people are all yellow, they think everything's always going to be amazing, and they get themselves into messes. Some people are all black, and they think everything's going to be terrible, and they can never do anything, because they're scared. So the blue hat says to you, look at everything in a fair way. Give equal time to the different hats so that you're making a proportionate decision. Okay, that's the end of Edward de Bono's system. But since he's not, Edward de Bono is the author of the 6 Thinking Hats. Since we're Jewish, we think we add 3 other hats. I'm going to call it the silver, the gold, and the platinum. Yeah. Silver. Kol Yisrael arevim ze lezeh. We're all responsible for each other. How does my decision affect other people? Because if you notice, you can go through all the hats, but there isn't really a moral hat. that you're putting on. I'm calling it the silver. The moral hat is like, I'm not just living in a world by myself. Is this decision going to hurt somebody? Is it going to affect somebody else badly? And I have to wear that hat as well. The gold is what we call emunat chachamim. Meaning, what does the Torah have to say about this? And am I seeking counsel from people who represent Torah? Bless you. And this is the concept of Das Torah, which I started talking about. I spoke about the woman who was pregnant with Mashiach, I think with the Satan last week. I think I wrote that.
That was last week?
That was or was it 2 weeks ago? Maybe?
No, it was last week.
Last week. Okay. The problem is that people cannot misuse Das Torah. You're not looking to dump your decision off on a rabbi, and you're also not looking to blame him for decisions, and you're not looking to hide information and think that he's a navi. But to go to a rabbi and say, I'm making a big decision, I'd be curious to know if there's a Torah perspective that would affect this decision, or is there any halachic ramifications to my decision? Then that is a very important hat to wear, and that's the gold hat. And this is after I process, and while I'm thinking about it, I go and I responsibly present an issue where I represent the sides and I don't hide information. And then I ask the rabbi if there's anything Torah-related that I should be taking into consideration in this decision. Some decisions do not have Torah-related implications, and sometimes you'd be surprised. Sometimes they do, even when you didn't think they did. So it's always good to run it through that hat as well. And the final hat, the platinum, is what's going to bring me closer to Hashem. And you know what? Even in careers, girls, I'm not saying that everybody has to choose a career based on what's most idealistic and but somewhere in there, that decision can be taken into consideration. And you can go for a certain field. I have many students who would be very, very good at business, and they could probably make a lot of money. But they decide to choose a career that will allow them to develop their midot and get closer to Hashem through chesed, through giving to the community, through maximizing themselves that way. I'm not saying that nobody should go into business. I'm not saying that. But sometimes a person says to himself, this career will get me much closer to Hashem than that career.
What if you can really think of a case for both, like two really viable options?
Okay, you know what? A healthy decision maker, when they have two viable options, says, you know what? These are both good options. I'll make the best of whichever one I choose.
Right.
And that is, by the way, I think we spoke about this before, the difference between people who have an easier time making decisions and not are their trust and their ability to maximize their potential in the decision. People who don't trust themselves are like, oh no, I might get messed up. People just like, well, that's great, I'll choose one of them. Often the scale will be tipped somewhere. Even if the scale is tipped because the white hat will tell you that one of your choices will be better for your lifestyle as a mother. Very often there's something. But yeah, the ability to think that I can make the best of my choices is a very important aspect of decision making. Confidence, to be able to maximize, for sure, completely. And there are decisions like that in life, for sure. Any other questions on this?
What would you call the platinum hat? Like each one had a name, positive, negative. What would you call it?
I call it kirvat Hashem, closeness to Hashem. Because as the Mesilas Yesharim says, the ultimate pleasure that a person has in life is getting close to Hashem. So I'm asking myself from a spiritual perspective, which choice is more pleasurable? And I want to say here, I don't know if you've ever learned this, girls, the Rambam on Knei Lecha Chaver. Has anybody ever done this with you in Pirkei Avot? Knei Lecha Chaver, the Rambam says that when you have to buy for yourself a friend, what's it mean to buy for yourself a friend? The Rambam says that there's 3 types of friendships. Each one is on a high. Each one's higher. There's a hierarchy. So the Rambam talks about the concept of a chaver. Have you learned this? Rambam, Maimonides. There's something called a chaver hana'ah. And think about your friendships this way. And think about, a boy in your life or a good friend in your life, a girl. And the Rambam says that the lowest level of friendship is chaver hana'ah. Chaver hana'ah is a friendship where I get something out of it, a certain kind of pleasure. My husband used to say that when he was in high school, they had a concept called rafters. Rafters was rent-a-friend. Rent-a-friend was you like to go boating, they like to go boating, so hi, you want to come boating with me? That's what the Rambam would call a chaver hana'ah. It's not a bad thing, but the friendship is not very deep. It's because we both enjoy the same things, or because you have great sweaters and I love to borrow them, or whatever that is. You know what I'm saying? That's a basic level of friendship, is chaver hana'ah. Then you have the next level on top of that, is the chaver bitachon. Have you learned this with anybody? This is the very basic in making friendships and understanding your relationships. Chaver bitachon means a security relationship. And the Rambam gives a very beautiful description that when you find a friend like this, it's a friend who you can trust, a friend who will never stab you in the back, a friend who you feel that you could be very real with, and they completely accept you the way you are. And I always like to stop after the second level of the Rambam, and I say, it's so hard to find a friend like that. What could possibly be better than that? And the Rambam says there's a third level, which he calls the chaver ledavar na'ala. Chaver ledavar na'ala means a friend that you and them have the same goals. And you're both striving to a goal that's higher than yourself. It's like a triangle. What's that? Chaver ledavar na'ala. Na'ala is nun ayin lamed hey, meaning a higher purpose. Me and this person, we want to build a Jewish community together. We want to do chesed together. We want to get closer to Hashem together. Meaning what's happening is that the thing that's uniting me and you is a third purpose, and that purpose is bigger than either of us. Rambam says something very, very beautiful. He says a chaver ledavar na'ala is on an even higher level than a chaver bitachon. Chaver bitachon, you think, I can trust this person, they're loyal to me, great. He's saying, if you're not united with a goal, a striving for something even higher than yourself, then even a chaver bitachon can get stale after a while. Yes?
What if you have a goal, what if you both have a goal to like become higher than yourself, but it's not the same height?
Meaning one of you is more driven than the other,
Yeah.
you're saying. You know what? It's a very good question. I think when I explain the chaver bitachon, you're going to get your answer to that. Many people make a marriage decision based on chaver bitachon. Meaning, I finally found somebody, he's such a good heart, he's so good to me, he cares about me, he's loyal to me, he never stabs me in the back, I could trust him. Great. In today's world, someone who you could trust, go for it. What happens, and this relates to what you're saying, happens 5-10 years down the line, is that very often somebody goes through a growth spurt. Somebody wants to grow, somebody wants something a little bigger than themselves. But very often one party's left behind. And the party said, I loved you the way you were when you were 19, don't change. And this creates a disparity in the relationship, where the person who is so loyal to you is still very loyal to you, but he could be holding you back from becoming a bigger person. And that, in life, is very, very difficult. I have to tell you honestly, girls, I see marriages like this. I see marriages where there's a big gap between the spouses. I have to tell you honestly, I teach women's group. I'm not going to say where. I have a certain community that I teach in where I think that most of the women are ahead of their husbands. But I must also tell you that it's painful for them. It's painful when you want to grow, when you want a Shabbos table with Divrei Torah, and like your husband's like, leave me alone. That's difficult. Why is it difficult? Because to be your husband's mashgiach is not a good thing. Yes?
I feel like I'm asking all the questions today.
It's fine, great.
What if one of you are on a spiritual growth spurt and the other one isn't into it, but they're still fine with you growing? So
there's different levels. I was just going to say, if the person supports you in what you're doing, and they're behind you and they're proud of you, that is good. But the struggle then is going to be not that they're holding you back, but that it's hard for you to maintain respect for somebody who's left behind. And I must tell you, women, I don't know why this is. I would love to hear if you'd help me understand this. I deal a lot with women and with single girls. I'd say that 98% of the girls who call me say, I wish he'd get up for a minyan. I wish he would learn a little more. I wish he'd be more into mitzvot. I have two women in my head, two of my former students, that I could say that they call me and say to me, he's such a tzaddik, I can't keep up with him. But that's 2 out of 98 out of 100. Most women are, wish he'd do a little more. And I have to tell you that, you know what I say to my two who say he's such a tzaddik, I can't keep up with him? I say to them, you're lucky. Because how about that should be our struggle in life? When I'm such a tzaddik, I can't keep up with him. It's painful for somebody to say, he's a man, I want him to grow, I wish he'd get up for minyan. But if I wake him up and say, I'm time for minyan, then I'm being his mashgiach. So they're in a lock where they would like the person to grow, and yet men don't want to be pushed around. Yes.
So I agree with you 100%, but isn't it like always like that? Not like always like that, but isn't the woman, she has that spiritual, like in her, so she already has that head start.
Yeah.
Also, isn't it our job to like send our husbands and kids to shul and whatever? So
it's such a good comment. First of all, I think that is one of the reasons why the women are ahead. But on some deep level, a woman might be more intense religiously than a man. And so that could be the explanation for why it's so disproportionate.
There's never not going to.
You're
It will be one of the other way, one way
But
around.
there's something, it's better than the gap is the other way. I'll tell you why, because the nature of a woman, this is what the pasuk in Bereshit says, Elishech shukatech, v'hu yimshalbach. That there's always going to be a relation. This was part of the onesh. Maybe before Chet Adam Rishon was supposed to be more equal. But there's something about that the woman has to look up to her husband. And there's something about the male ego that he needs to feel that he's giving. And the relationship between male and woman is shafa and is mashpia and mushpa, to be influenced. A male ego desperately needs to influence. And the woman needs to be able to accept his influence. When that is a little off, because she's really the influencer, there's a feeling of both of them of something like is off. So you're right, they're not going to be on the same page. It's better if it be the other way. I would want you to call me up and say to me, he's such a tzaddik, I don't know what to do. It's just something that's painful. It's painful. And then you're right, because the Gemara says that you're supposed to be sending your husband off. But he's not supposed to be feeling that you're sending him off with a whistle and a stick. You're sending him off with his favorite cookies, maybe. It's different. Yes, Rachel.
How do you push without pushing? How do you do the proper question?
Okay. So I will give 1 minute to this, and we'll definitely have to talk to this more. I got a phone call. Maybe I even once spoke to you guys about this. I got a phone call once from a certain student of mine. She had this thing that she maybe wants to marry somebody going to chinuch or kiruv, but she also was open to a professional. She wasn't sure. She ended up marrying a very, very, very nice dentist. He's a great guy. Over the years, between dentistry school and the pressures of his internship and the pressures of his thing, his learning went down. When she first went out with him, he was learning more. She calls me up, she says to me, I really want him to learn. Did I ever tell you about this scenario? I really want him to learn more. And she says, you know what, we don't fight. She says, it's Shabbos afternoon, and he's playing with the kids, and there's a shiur, I know there's a shiur. And I say to him, oh honey, don't worry, I'll take the kids. You go to the shiur. And he says back to me in an equally sweet voice, oh no honey, don't worry, you go rest, I'm watching the kids. They're not fighting, but they're in a religious power struggle. It's sweet like anything, because they're both sweet people. But she's saying learn, he's saying no. Because she's basically saying, I want you to be more. And he's saying, well, I want you to accept me unconditionally the way I am. I don't want to feel that I'm not good enough for you. So as sweet as it is, it's still a fight. And I want to tell you that I think that being in a power struggles in marriages are not good. Religious power struggles are dangerous. Because if the person has to dafka lower his standard to prove to you that he's not changing for you, then you're not in a good spiral. So I want to tell you, that was a very good question. I told this girl, I said to her, you know what? It's a 2-year plan. She's like, hi, 2 years? I want to change this by tomorrow. I said, you have to influence him, because women are the influencers. But you have to influence him very subtly. I said, any negative feedback he's getting from you is just going to cause a kickback. It's going to cause like I'll decide when I want to learn. And maybe even not getting out of bed the next day because you wanted it. The male ego is strong in that way. Men do not like to be pushed around. So I said to her, what you need to affect him. So you need to create what we're going to call a positive pleasure cycle. Positive pleasure cycle means like this. Every time he does go to learn, you're in a great mood. When he doesn't go to learn, you don't show him anything. You're not being negative when he's not performing the way you want him to, but when he is, it's just like you're really in a good mood. What goes on down subconsciously over time is, oh, I make her happy when I learn. I'm providing. I want to provide more. And you don't even have to say anything about it. And you know what I said to him? I said, you have to look for his ruchnius. Search for it. She says, he's not really providing. I'm like, does he ever give a Dvar Torah? Yeah, a little bit of Shabbos. Good. Listen carefully when he gives it, and tell him 3 days later, I was thinking about that idea that you said, and it really helped me in this way. You want to add to that? You want to ask me? Yes. What's that?
Let's say you're married, like, a car or like something like that, or something
That's, you know what? This is where the woman being ahead is better, in a sense, because if a woman is not strong about halacha, then it's really a problem. But very, very often it's tricky. I mean, I tell women to sit with rabbis about what they can, because the idea is if you're going to be tough, you're going to often have a bad effect on the person. So I tell women to consult with rabbis. Where should I put my foot down? Where should I not? What should I do? It's a big question when it comes to halacha, what to do. You're right. And many people are told to like kind of give in a little bit and to like, you know, it's a whole process, but it's very problematic. When one person is really not committed to halacha and the other one is, it's really not easy. There is the only place where a woman being committed to halacha, being ahead of the man is better. Because the kitchen is her, and Tarda Mishpacha is largely her, and if she's the weak party, then it really affects the house badly. I know a few men who are not religious at all, who are married to a religious woman. I don't know the opposite. I don't know any not religious woman who's married to a religious man, because it's hard for a religious man to live with a not religious woman, just in terms of basic halacha. So it's a good question. Okay, we're going to have to stop here. Oh, I went over, but we'll finish up with this idea because this is important about how to influence religious faith. And please remember to bring this down.